Great. Okay, we're going to go directly to questions from the audience themselves, starting with Peter Porobov, and then rolling onwards from there for a few questions.
Yeah, thank you, Vivek. So Vitalik, I have a more philosophical question. So imagine totalitarian regimes, they fall due to some faults like death of dictator. So with blockchains and smart contracts, we can maybe not on purpose program the perfect unstoppable regimes. Do you think we need to even think about it, maybe to program some imperfections into our protocols? Or what are your thoughts on that?
No, this is definitely an interesting question. It actually even ties in a bit to some of the kind of critical comments I gave about on-chain governance back in the day, or I guess back in the last previous hour. So, like, there is definitely this kind of fundamental problem, right? That like any system that we come up with to manage human relations and like minimize conflict and encourage cooperation and all these good things is likely to have errors in it and has risks of falling into some kind of very bad outcome. And, this is unavoidable in some ways, right? And so like when we have so much uncertainty and when it's unavoidable, I feel like the least bad thing that we can do is basically just make sure that we have a kind of multiple different systems that are operating in parallel, and just make sure that if one of them does fall, there continues to exist at least something outside that can challenge it. Right. And like in the real world, there's a lot of this, right? Like, if one country becomes too dictatorial, there's always foreign countries that, the dissidents could potentially call to for help. If the government becomes too powerful, then, there's things that like the corporations and kind of business elites can do. If corporations become too powerful, then the government can regulate them. There's just all of these different kind of various groups in society. And I think it's healthy when you have these multiple groups that are organized according to different principles, and to just reduce the chance that, they all turn into something terrible at the same time, and it's important to prevent any one of them from gaining too much power over the others. And like blockchains are the same way, right? Like one example of this is like the thing that happened with Steam and Hive earlier this year, or near the beginning of last year, right? Like, you had this platform, and Justin Sun came in and he bought Steam, the company, and then he managed to like basically kind of grab a large amount of control over Steam, the network, by basically, taking it over through the delegated proof of stake system. And the community was very unhappy, but the community managed to escape that outcome by basically just making a fork. And they're saying, okay, we're going to make this new thing, and we're just going to delete the coins of everyone who participated in this hostile takeover of the old thing. Right, so the users just went en masse to this new thing called Hive. Steam continued existing, but it was just from that point on just like a shell of its former self, right? Justin controlled it, but what did Justin really end up controlling? So, like that's one example of like two different systems kind of checking each other's balances, like kind of the power of exit serving as a check against a formal governance system gone wrong. And like I think we just need like lots of examples like that, like just lots of cases where we can just have these different systems check each other, so that if one fails, the others can cover for it.
Great, cool. I'm going to pass the mic to Mahoney from New Zealand.
Thank you for being here. I have a question relating back to more of a climate sustainability thing. Would love to hear your thoughts on nature-backed currencies.
What is a nature-backed currency?
Well, exactly? I mean,
Hmm.
the relationship possibly with carbon. Yeah, there's lots of options around what element
Right.
of nature is backing that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, they're right. There's definitely a lot of people trying to do various interesting things in that regard. I think the challenge is like just figuring out the right model, right? Like a big part of the problem is that a lot of people try to make these currencies, and like there's a lot of very good intentions, like trying to encourage people to act in more environmentally sustainable ways, for example. But the problem is that like in order to have an incentive system, you need a sink and a source, right? Like you need a place where the resources go, and you need a place where the resources come from. And if you don't have some place where the resources come from, then no matter how good a system you build, like it's going to have a hard time kind of getting any actual ability to change people's behavior. And I'm sure that there's something that can be designed, though I'm also not sure exactly kind of what it would like what it would look like. So
Yeah.
yeah,
There'll be many experiments hopefully in this space as well. I'm excited.
exactly. Yeah, just more experiments, and hopefully we will see something great come out.
Amazing. Charles Blass, if you want to go next. And then after that, I have Luke Miller.
Thank you. Yes, amazing conversation. Thanks, everyone, and Kernel crew. So going back to tagging on actually to Mahoney's question, but also going right back to this before. So in a geopolitical and media landscape sense, relating to like climate and existential risk, but in regard to totalitarianism on one end of the scale, and then sort of on the other end, like the social norms I want to point to and think about kind of the quiet signals and kind of stuff bubbling beneath the surface in the culture and the social areas of Ethereum and wider blockchain community. So, you know, in contrast with your excellent assessment, scientific and mathematic, in response to Peter, I'm just curious, any general particular thoughts on sort of social norms, social conflict resolution protocols yesterday, today, and especially tomorrow? Thanks.
Social norms and conflict resolution processes, and I definitely think that those are important. I guess trying to kind of think like if there's some kind of some very specific example in our context. I mean, in some ways, you could think of like almost every, lots of things as being kind of conflict resolution protocols, right? Like even governance protocols are conflict resolution protocols. Like if one side wants to make a fork that implements feature A, the other side wants to make a fork that doesn't implement feature A and implements feature B instead, then some mechanism that allows the community to decide like does resolve the conflict that would happen if the chain just ended up kind of splitting in half for a reason that was really not worth splitting over. So I feel like anytime you have like any kind of governance mechanism, that's a conflict resolution protocol as well. And we have those for blockchain protocols. We have those for applications on top of protocols. We have those for just a lot of different things throughout the ecosystem. Potentially, there's even blockchain-based applications that could be used to kind of resolve or minimize or potentially even adjudicate conflicts that start outside of the blockchain space. And I know there's projects that are trying to do this as well. So I guess it's definitely a very important area. And I think like if you have this kind of more expanded understanding of like what conflicts are and what conflict resolution are, like there's tons of projects that are trying to do something in something of that form.